We can't wait, and nothing gets done.
We had a lot of meetings like this. It led to the biggest success on tax reform in over 30 years. So if the president embraces something like Manchin Toomey, the president could make the difference.
Reaction pouring in this morning over the resignation of White House Communications Director Hope Hicks. Ivanka Trump writing, Hope Hicks is loved and admired by all who know her.
U.S. steel and aluminum top bosses are heading to the White House today, sparking a major trade announcement rumor. The meeting comes the same day that top economic aides are set to meet with the Chinese.
Like, God, if you think I'm supposed to run, you got to tell me.
Will it be the same standard? Will she say that Oprah Winfrey is mentally ill as she said Mike Pence was mentally ill?
If you win, will you get high?
Definitely.
What does the man running against that so-called cannabis candidate think?
Actually, he could be arrested today if they want to pick him up.
Studio on news every morning, and we got a whole batch of new stuff to talk about. 8 o'clock here in New York City on the first day of March.
Of course, we are waiting on Kellyanne Conway to be here any moment, and of course there's going to be some changes. Last night in the afternoon, being that there was no other news going on, we finally had something to get our teeth into. Hope Hicks says, okay, I've had it, I'm finished, I'm through for now. And a lot of accolades started pouring in, not only from the president, even from John Kelly himself, and Ivanka Trump, all saying things about what Hope Hicks has meant to the campaign and to the president.
She's been helping the president when he was the candidate over the last 3 years. Kellyanne Conway joins us right now from the North Lawn of the White House. Good morning to you, Kellyanne.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, so there are a million people speculating why Hope Hicks left. Was it the Rob Porter thing? Was it the white lies thing? She couldn't take the heat. Why'd she leave?
This is very simple. Hope's been doing this for 3 years nonstop, and I think the president spoke for all of us who have had the privilege and pleasure of working closely with Hope and getting to know her as a friend, that she's fantastic and she has done a tremendous job for him, and as the president says, will probably be back in his orbit at some time and someday to help yet again. But she, Hope is somebody, as communications director, what most people don't understand, to be effective at that job, and she's been enormously effective at that job, you have to really understand the underlying policies here. She shepherded a lot of resources and surrogates, and indeed the president's voice himself, when it came to passing major initiatives like tax reform, working on infrastructure now, holding forth at some of these roundtables yesterday on school safety. Yet last week's listening session with those affected by school shootings was Hope's original idea. And that's one example of many I can give you on how she very quietly but very assiduously has worked behind the scenes to make a real impact for the president, the presidency, and really for her country.
Kellyanne, she's going to be very hard to replace, and I'm wondering, have you thought about it, or have they offered you to take that job?
I've been offered that job many times, no, I work on policy here at the White House, and you're right, it's going to be very difficult to replace Hope Hicks in the Hope role, which was a very multidimensional role over the course of 3 years. But I think it's important to talk about those 3 years. We've been here for 13 months, but Hope is one of those unbroken threads between the early days of the primary campaign, all through the campaign, on the plane, practically every day, including on weekends, with candidate Trump, during transition with him and with us, and certainly here since day one of the administration. And Hope's a New Yorker. She wants to go. She's got a great family she's close to, and she has a wonderful future, and we're all excited to see. I love her, and I'll miss her very much, because she is the kind of person, as General Kelly said, is wise beyond her years, very poised, very talented, and she wielded a great deal of her power very quietly. She had the luxury of not having to come on TV often, but I think we'll hear from her. And one day when Hope Hicks sits down to give a major post-White House interview, millions of people will tune in, and I'll be one of them.
Yeah, you have to tell her to come do that right here on Fox and Friends.
Got room on the couch.
Yeah, she is stunning, has quite a resume now, 29 years old, and she can say that she was the communications director for the President of the United States. That's pretty incredible. Let's talk about the bipartisan meeting yesterday, because the President's been meeting with law enforcement, with families that have been affected by school shootings, and also with Democrats and Republicans, trying to come up with a plan that makes the majority of Americans happy and do something to make our country and our schools safer. What are your thoughts about what's happening there on the Hill and these bipartisan meetings?
Well, several things. The president has taken a real leadership role from day one that we all learned about this terrible tragedy 15 days ago. He has had listening sessions with the affected families and also with public safety and education officials, and then yesterday with those who ultimately will put something on his desk, one would hope, the Congress, a bicameral, bipartisan meeting. This meeting was not about gun control. This meeting, let's not forget, is about school safety. We're talking about all of this in the context of the tragedy that occurred in Parkland, Florida. And we have to remember that when the president comments yesterday, he was talking about that particular shooter in many instances, that we all saw what this person had posted on social media, but after the fact. We all know now dozens and dozens and dozens of calls and warnings about this individual.
Right.
And everybody is angry and everybody is heartbroken. But we wonder, how can this slip through the cracks? And so with that as the backdrop, the president is saying stronger background checks. The president has called for raising the age, as has Dick's Sporting Goods and Walmart, and others perhaps raising the age when you can buy certain firearms. Those companies have to make a business decision. Sure. He's leading the nation in a conversation. But the president told me just last night, we had a conversation late last night about yesterday's session. He told me last night that there are elements of the Toomey Manchin bill and there are elements of the Cornyn-Murphy bill that he is supportive of, and he's made that very clear. And I think that itself shows some bipartisan impulses. But he also is very respectful of the Second Amendment and the law-abiding citizens who own and possess their firearms in a peaceful way, and that they have their rights also. He knows that.
And Kellyanne, the NRA said after the meeting, they said, well, the meeting was great TV. The gun control proposals discussed would make bad policy that would not keep our children safe. You could see the people around that table coming together, but how does the NRA fit into this equation? Because it seems like the American people really want to get something done this time, and the NRA's got to be at the table as well.
Well, they were at the table. They were at the table, a private table with the president over the weekend. He made that very clear to the governors and said it on live TV, including Fox News, on Monday when he met with the governors, that he had had lunch. He shared a meal with the executive members, 3 of them from the NRA or so, and that he's also listening to them. But the president's made very clear, hardening the target. This is about school safety. Let's focus there, everybody. Got to harden the targets. We're leaving many of these schools vulnerable. Also, I read about 98% of the school mass shootings that have occurred since the 1950s have been in gun-free zones. The president has made very clear in all of these sessions on live TV for all to see that he believes that we're just inviting more violence by keeping these gun-free. He has called for arming a very small and specific population of gun-adept teachers or administrators. He's called, I saw Governor Scott of Florida yesterday calling for securing the doors, having metal detectors perhaps, or better locks. So there are many, that's right, there are many different proposals on the table. But that's what a democracy allows. It allows a conversation like this. It's up to the Congress to go back and see what they can put on the president's desk. But he is listening.
All right, so you have Senator Toomey joined us earlier. Him and Joe Manchin have a bill that's been out since 2012. And Joe Manchin said to Neil Cavuto yesterday, if this was our president in 2013, this would have passed, because a lot of Republicans were not for it. It looks like they might tune it up and represent it. Here's what he told us earlier.
We had a lot of meetings like this about tax reform, and it led to the biggest success on tax reform in over 30 years, as you know. So it really, in my view, if the president embraces something like Manchin-Toomey, a bill that had broad bipartisan support but couldn't quite get to 60 votes, the president could make the difference.
And is that what the president's behind, Kellyanne, when you spoke to him last night?
He definitely said that there are elements of Toomey Manchin and elements of Fix Nix, Cornyn and Murphy bills that he can support. Remember, he's also took immediate action against bump stocks. That could have been done before, but it took this president to do it. This is a president who seems to keep the promise of many different presidents. He did that with Jerusalem. He's doing that certainly when it comes to historic tax reform. And as Senator Toomey says, this is a president that invites people around the table and then invites Americans into the cabinet room to watch on live TV, unfiltered, unscripted, what is happening. And we should all welcome that. I think Toomey and Manchin have a point that their legislation came out after the horrible, unspeakable tragedy in Sandy Hook with those school children and their educators. And it never passed.
Nope.
But this is a president who's saying, let's look at that. Let's look at what Senator Cornyn and Senator Murphy. Senator Murphy, of course, represents Connecticut, where Sandy Hook is, Newtown is. And so he is having a conversation, but he also wants to hear from different points of view, and that includes the NRA representing millions of law-abiding gun owners.
Kellyanne, something else that the president's tackling is the opioid crisis. I know there's a forum to combat this problem we have in our country. What can we expect today?
So today we'll have a 2-hour summit here at the White House. The First Lady will kick it off, which is wonderful. And then we have 6 cabinet secretaries really showing the country what their respective departments and agencies have been doing to tackle the opioid crisis since the president's HHS secretary declared a public health emergency last October, and since the president went first in sharing his family story about his brother. Here at the White House, we're happy to hear that Congress is coming up with about $6 billion in special funding to help combat this crisis. That's far and above any number any administration have had. But this president is focused on prevention and education, treatment and recovery, and law enforcement and interdiction. You'll hear from the Attorney General, from the Secretaries of HUD and Homeland Security and the VA and HHS. They will hold forth telling us what their departments and agencies are doing to stop the flow of drugs, the supply into here, and stop Americans who are getting hooked, and those who are already addicted. We're going to have addiction and recovery treatment experts in the audience, as well as affected families. It'll be in the East Room 1 to 3. Another
slow news day at the White House. Busy, busy, busy. Kellyanne, thank you very much for making a little time with us.
Have a great
day.
Thanks.
You too.
You too. All right. It's about 8:12 here in New York City. Coming up, Hillary Clinton has an urgent warning for President Trump. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. We'll explain what that means coming up.
And President Trump's about to make good on another campaign promise. Stuart Varney's going to join us next on how it's going to impact the economy and your family.
Stu who?
Stu what's good?
Was tweeting. He tweeted out, "Our steel and aluminum industries, and many others, have been decimated by decades of unfair trade and bad policy with countries from around the world. We must not let our country, companies, and workers be taken advantage of any longer. We want free, fair, and smart trade."
Now, we've been talking about this, and the president's been running on this, defending American workers against the world community taking advantage of us. So as the White House plans a major steel and aluminum import announcement, what should we expect to hear?
Joining us now is the host of Varney & Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney. Stuart?
We don't have details yet, but what we are expecting is a 25% tax on steel coming into this country, an import tax, and a 10% tax on aluminum coming into this country. The immediate prospect is a tit-for-tat war with our major trading partners. The European Union has already said that they will take countermeasures. I guess they put tariffs on some of our products going over there. And by the way, China's top economic advisor to President Xi, he will be at the White House this week, maybe today, which implies that the president has just taken a very tough negotiating position. Here's what I'm going to do. What are you going to do? Right. It looks like that's where we are.
And that's our #1 trading partner. So you have to wonder what they're going to do and what country gets the brushback pitch. Who's dumping steel here, hurting our steel people?
The allegation is that it's the Europeans primarily, and also and China as well.
What could they do? Back to us.
Look, what the president wants to do here, back up a little bit. What the president says is, look, these huge trade agreements that we've entered into in recent years, they work fine in the interests of big corporations, but they don't work well in the interests of ordinary Americans. Right. He wants to restructure the whole trading situation so that any trade deal benefits ordinary Americans. Right. As he sees it, as he sees America's interest, he wants to restructure trade like that.
He says in his tweet he wants free and fair trade. What's the difference?
They are political terms. Free trade is what we used to call these mammoth trade agreements, like NAFTA, for example. That was free trade, not in America's interests, according to President Trump. He wants fair trade, which would be in America's interests, and there's a big difference.
Okay, so what he's doing is because these other countries are dumping steel out.
That's the allegation.
The allegation. We know what's happening. So he's going to tack a tariff on it to equalize things. Ultimately, though, folks watching, they're thinking, okay, is my next car going to cost more because it's made of steel and aluminum, stuff like that?
Not much. if anything.
What does it mean?
Well, then it's worth it to the American,
anything.
To the American worker.
Unless you get into a full-scale trade war where our stuff going over there gets hit with a huge tariff as well, so we send less stuff over there. That hurts everybody if we get there.
A couple of news items on trade. 8 rents because he sees it, as many others saw it, as a pushback against China in the region.
Well, the president is taking an increasingly hard line on trade, as witnessed by the steel and aluminum tariffs which he is about to propose. That's a very hard line. It is a negotiating line. You've seen this before.
Yep.
This is what the president does. He gets right out there up front with a tough line. Negotiate from here, sports fans. Get on with it.
He's a disruptor, and he's disrupting.
He is.
All right, Stuart, thank you.
Sure thing.
And we're going to watch your show and do a simulcast, right?
Yes, we are.
We're going to be on together.
By popular
You're
demand.
on at 9 o'clock on the Business Channel, and you're on radio at 9.
Right, so we merge mediums at 10:34.
So turn your TV on Fox Business, but your radio on Brian. Listen to them both at the same time.
It's an event and a half, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thanks, Stuart. All right, straight ahead. President Trump is working with both sides of the aisle to come up with gun safety measures. NRA spokesperson Dana Lash weighs in with what she heard yesterday.
Plus, Todd Pyro is with voters in Bowling Green, Kentucky, having breakfast with friends.
You mean Bowling Green? You close to Bowling.
What did I call? Like Blowing Rock? I'm thinking North Carolina.
Yeah, it's bowling.
Bowling Green.
That's good.
Good morning to you. Welcome back with some quick headlines right now, starting with the Fox News alert. Russia just unveiled a so-called invincible nuclear missile that cannot be shot down by the U.S. Vladimir Putin boasting about the new weapon in a pre-election speech moments ago, saying it can hit anywhere in the world. Putin also unveiling a nuclear-capable missile fired from a submarine drone. He says it's in response to the U.S. breaking anti-missile treaties. And Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign paying nearly $15,000 in fines for accepting money from Australians. Volunteers were given stipends and money for airfare for working during the primaries. That's considered illegal foreign contributions. The Sanders camp denies breaking the rules. And Hillary Clinton takes a shot at President Trump, accusing him of surrendering to the Russians. She tweets, quote, "The Russians are still coming. Our intelligence professionals are imploring Trump to act. Will he continue to ignore and surrender or protect our country?" Clinton not calling out former President Obama, who President Trump says knew about the meddling back in 2014, but did nothing. Guys, send it back to you.
All right, Jillian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jillian.
A couple of days ago, we were telling you about how the mayor of the great city of Oakland, California, had gotten wind that there might be ICE raids. Keep in mind, California is a sanctuary state. Oakland, California, a sanctuary city. It has been suggested that by virtue of the fact that she warned illegals ICE could be coming, that could be obstruction of justice.
Yeah, Department of Justice is now looking at that to find out if they would consider that obstruction of justice. What she did is she hears that ICE is coming in and she feels sorry for the illegal criminal aliens that live in her area. She put something on Twitter saying, if you're here, they're coming for you, you better leave.
She says humanitarian. And she, by the way, she has no regrets about it. Listen.
I continue to feel confident that what I did was the right thing and it was legal. I did not give specific information that could have endangered law enforcement. I encouraged people to not panic, but to know their rights, to know their responsibilities, and to know about the unique resources that are available in this community.
Okay, she can say whatever she wants to. Justice, and allowed, apparently they were looking for 1,000 illegals, criminal aliens. And they were able to scoop up 150, but 864 vanished. And the ICE guy who's running that department is steamed.
What she did is no better than a gang lookout yelling police when a police cruiser comes in the neighborhood, except she did it to the entire community. I mean, it's beyond the pale. I've been doing this for 34 years, and this is a whole new low to intentionally warn criminals that law enforcement's coming. I just can't believe it happened.
Well, something's got to change because there's going to be more raids. The sanctuary state of California is going to be the focus, so I don't know if all these other mayors are going to look to do the same thing.
It's a crazy thing.
Well, if they look to their constituents and if they look to the people who are putting them in office and the taxpayers, like you said yesterday, the majority of the people that live in these sanctuary state areas, they're not for it. All right, Todd Pyro is having breakfast with friends. Where is he, Brian? He's in Kentucky.
He's at Bowling Green, Kentucky.
And it's noisy there.
You have a baby.
It's very noisy, but look, you're going to meet Bristol in a second. First of all, it is Phyllis's birthday, so let's wish Phyllis a happy birthday. And her granddaughter, Bristol, brought her these cupcakes. And look at this hat that Bristol's wearing. It says, "Make America Great Again, Trump," and then their last name, Nally. Phyllis, I want to ask you, you worked in schools. You were a school bus driver for years. You say we need to harden our school security. Why do you say that?
Well, because, you know, you don't know what them kids is going to have on them at any time. I'm the first one they see. I'm the last one they see when they get out of school. And I think that, you know, that they should have maybe clear backpacks or, I don't know, some kind of security there that you can't have it unless you're on the bus.
Right.
And I've had a lot of incidents, but I'm retired now.
So basically, we got to do something. I need a high five from Bristol. High five, Bristol. Thanks, Bristol. We're going to go now to Brian. Brian's retired military, big proponent of the Second Amendment, big Donald Trump fan, and he says he doesn't love everything the president is doing with regard to guns, but he says he understands why he's doing it. Explain.
Well, I understand that you do have, I think a lot of the measures that the president is taking is trying to, a lot of time, pacify the gun control people, like raising the age limit, but it may be effective. But what I really am supportive of is him arming the teachers against the aggressive forces that come against the shooters that come into school. The teachers must understand that those children are your responsibility. And as a parent would defend a child with a gun, even so the teacher should be able to defend the lives of the children that is under their care during that time period, and not just as sacrificial lambs where they throw themselves in front of the gunman, but to equip them with what they need to be able to fight back aggressively against the threat that is being posed.
Brian, thank you for your answer. Phyllis, happy birthday again. Bristol, you keep on keeping on. We're going to send it on back to New York City. Great job, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Very nice. Happy birthday to her, and let those people eat those full plates of food. That was good.
All right, it is almost 30 minutes after the top of the hour. President Trump is working with both sides of the aisle to come up with a gun safety measure. NRA spokeswoman Dana Lash, she weighs in when she joins us live.
And remember that college course all about removing President Trump from office? Well, this morning, a big update.
About school safety. With that as the backdrop, the president is saying stronger background checks. The president has called for raising the age, as has Dick's Sporting Goods and Walmart, when you can buy certain firearms. He also is very respectful of the Second Amendment and the law-abiding citizens who own and possess their firearms in a peaceful way, and that they have their rights also. He knows that.
And we saw a lot of what the president was thinking because he hashed it out amongst a hand-picked group of lawmakers, bipartisan, yesterday, and it lasted almost an hour. And a lot of people were saying that, you know, the NRA is going to be a hindrance or a supporter of this bill and the president. In the end, they're part of the dialogue. Are people afraid to deal with them? Dana Lash joins us now, nationally syndicated radio host of the Dana Show, and then NRA spokesperson. Dana, did you watch yesterday? And if so, does anything concern you that came out of that meeting?
I did, Brian, and good morning. It's always good to be with you guys. I did watch it. I was on air when it happened, and so I had it in my ear, was watching every second of it, and I just, you know, it's great to watch when you're watching it on TV, and I love the fascinating discussions, but at the same time, it doesn't make for great policy for keeping our kids safe. Look, there's a way that you can respect and protect due process and protect the rights of millions of Americans while also hardening our schools and keeping kids safe. You know, NRA members, we're moms and dads too. And I want to point out as well that Wayne LaPierre, president of NRA, has been talking about hardening our schools for a long time now. He's been talking about this for several years. When he first came out with it, he was mocked endlessly by the media when he discussed how important it was to make sure that our schools were protected, that they were able to implement implement strategies to harden them so our teachers and kids can feel safe. So ultimately, I watched everything that happened during this discussion, and it's not going to make for policy for keeping kids safe. There's a number of things that we can do. That's why the NRA has been pushing towards actionable solutions. That's why we have NRA School Shield, and that's why we've put our resources up for full disposal of any schools that want to implement them.
Dana, I think we're all on board with you that the school should be hardened, and the president has been talking about, maybe we do across the board what they do in a number of states, and that is arm some of the teachers. That's still up for discussion. But wouldn't you say, additionally, that, for instance, the Cornyn-Toomey bill, which they tried to pass, they came up with after Sandy Hook, that expands background checks, is a step in the right direction because there are some unstable people who simply should not have guns?
And I listened to that discussion of Manchin Toomey yesterday, and Toomey himself even said that this bill would have not done anything to have prevented this atrocity. It simply wouldn't have. And when you talk about the background check system and you talk about keeping firearms out of the hands of those who are mentally unstable and therefore dangerous to themselves or others, this is something that we're all in agreement on, which is why it is inconceivable to millions of American families why they're the ones being punished for the failures of government. I mean, we all have to realize that firearm did not walk itself into the school. It was allowed to after 45 missed calls. Well, this murderer himself called the sheriff's department, 2 missed FBI tips, and under Florida law, they could have charged him with the felony and brought him in because he simply
let me ask you just to follow up on what you're saying. Are you saying the NRA is for expanded background checks? Because that's kind of what it sounded like.
Now, the NRA has always been in support of making sure that states are accurately and fully reporting all of the convictions. Those who are prohibited possessors, they have their due process. They go before a judge. They're either adjudicated mentally unfit, a danger to themselves or others, or because of their own free will, they've voluntarily given up their rights because they've behaved so criminally heinously that the punishment of that is giving up their Second Amendment rights. But they receive due process, and that's what's really important to remember here. When we talk about the age restrictions or increasing ages, you're not punishing the gangbanger in Chicago. You're not punishing those individuals that are, adjudicated unfit and are dangerous to themselves, and the states aren't submitting those records to NCIC. You're punishing people like I was when I was 20 years old, living on my own. You're punishing the 19-year-old deer hunter who just is looking forward to deer season. Those are the people that you're punishing here. So it absolutely is possible to respect due process and make sure that our #1 priority, our kids, are protected.
Yeah, I heard this morning, I heard Judge Napolitano say that the Second Amendment was written not so that dads could take their sons to go out and hunt. It's more so dads can protect their families or moms can protect their families. I want to read a tweet that the president wrote. He says, many ideas, some good, some not so good, emerged from our bipartisan meeting on school safety yesterday at the White House. Background checks, a big part of the conversation. Gun-free zones are proven targets of killers. After many years, a bill should emerge, respect Second Amendment. So in your opinion, what are the good and what are the bad ideas, Dana?
Well, I like one of the things that the president was saying when he brings up hardening schools, and I think that he has been maligned and misrepresented in the media in this fashion when he says that we need to make sure that teachers can be armed, because the way that I've seen it represented by other disingenuous networks is that the president is saying, well, we have to mandatory arm all teachers. Well, that's not what he's calling for. He's calling for teachers who feel comfortable, who are volunteering to be armed. Have those individuals go through training. If they feel comfortable to do that on school grounds, then let's explore that option. He's talking about also just some infrastructure things, making sure that our simple things like reinforcing windows, having bulletproof glass, making sure that you have really good security checkpoints at all entrances and exits. These are some of the things that the president has discussed before. And instead of seeing headlines exploring that further, I've seen people mocking him because he's going and discussing some teachers who want to volunteer voluntarily arm themselves. And, you know, you spoke with a bunch of people in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I'm telling you what, I'm hearing from people, and Brian, I'm sure you are too, all over the country who are saying, yes, can we make it to where our kids are not soft targets and just implement some of these common sense strategies?
Yeah,
that's one of the things that the president has discussed. I hope that we can explore that, and I hope the media can do it genuinely.
Right. No one had it worse than you in that town hall where people were just so emotional and illogical. They were unconsolable. But here's the one thing I want to bring you to. We have a few 911 calls where people called up and said, you know, I called about Nicholas Cruz, and they told me they can't do anything, and because he hasn't broken any laws yet, and it's he said, she said. And one of the things the president said is, take the guns, go through due process. Second, if someone is indeed dangerous, as looked at by a law enforcement official. What's your reaction to that?
Well, one of the things that NRA leadership stressed to the president on Sunday is that due process must be respected. You have to harden schools, protect kids, but due process must be respected. Now, where it concerns this particular murderer and the dereliction of duty from the Broward sheriff, I made mention of this at the town hall, and yesterday the Miami Herald, actually 2 days ago, Miami Herald came out with an article discussing this issue with Florida prosecutors. Under Florida law, there's a statute wherein if you are sending either a letter or any kind of electronic communication threatening to injure or commit bodily harm to someone else, that's a felony, and on that you can actually be charged. And all of these prosecutors in this Miami Herald piece agreed. When I asked the sheriff about this during the town hall, he deflected and then shifted and tried to go around and blame the NRA and millions of innocent law-abiding Americans who had nothing to do with his abdication of duty. So there were grounds, because he was threatening to shoot people in messages. He was threatening to kill them. One of them said, quote, I'm going to make you bleed, or I'll watch you bleed. And when you put things up on social media talking about how you're going to be a school shooter using your actual name, you have all of this, you have a number of assaults on your record, there's a lot there. So prosecutors were discussing how this sheriff actually had that authority. That's what we have to follow up on. The laws, you have to, it's not a failure of the law, it's a failure of enforcement with this particular respect. And by the way, God bless Cocoa Beach Police and Coral Springs Police, because they heard the sound of gunfire, they ran toward it. The Broward sheriff went towards the camera lights.
Yeah, the Broward sheriff's got a lot of questions to be answered. Dana, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
It's the #1 topic in America right now. The New York Times, by the way, under fire for an article about President Trump's tax cuts featuring a married couple that won't benefit under the plan. The only problem? The couple doesn't exist. Our next guest is coming out, and they're real.
New York Times under fire for writing an article about President Trump's tax plan featuring a married couple that would not benefit under the new tax plan law. The only problem? Couple doesn't exist. The Times writing about hypothetical situations featuring an imaginary couple. Well, our next guest is calling out the paper in his new op-ed, writing, quote, much of the press corps has naturally sought to find and highlight those few taxpayers who won't be enjoying any relief. Joining us right now is the assistant editorial page editor at the Wall Street Journal, Fox News contributor. He's a busy guy, James Freeman. Good morning to you, James.
Good to be here, Steve. Thanks.
Okay, so the New York Times made up this couple because that was the only way they could essentially find somebody who wouldn't benefit under the plan.
Well, it's not easy to find people. You've got roughly 90% of America, maybe even higher, getting a tax cut. But as we said, the press tends to like to focus on people who aren't. But this is a hypothetical couple.
Right.
The Times claims they're going to pay $4,000 more in taxes, and it kind of hit home. It was presented as kind of a news you can use thing because it's talking about a couple in the New York suburbs.
Sure.
The problem here is that Daniel Hemmel, a tax law professor at the University of Chicago, said, actually, that's not right. Your imaginary couple, even they are getting a tax cut. You got it wrong, New York Times.
That's right. So he tweeted this out. New York Times has a really nice infographic explaining the ways in which the new tax law will play out in 1040. Unfortunately, the bottom line conclusion that Samuel and Felicity, that's the fictional couple, will owe about $4,000 more in taxes under the new law appears to be wrong. They'll actually owe less. I say this as someone who is generally happy to point out the ways in which the new tax law produces unattractive results, but the couple appears to be among the winners because the New York Times didn't factor in something important.
Yeah, and, you know, we think of the New York Times often being criticized by conservatives for bias, but here we have essentially a liberal law professor who is not a fan of the Trump tax plan and really has basically the perfect liberal establishment resume. Summa cum laude from Harvard, Marshall Scholar at Oxford, Yale Law Review, and he was a clerk for Justice Kagan. So I think his authority on this subject certainly would exceed the Times, but so far, no correction.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe they have this on in the newsroom. Let's hope so. It's been several days now, and I think it's about time.
Well, it's just, you know, it's one of those things where if you're going to make up a couple to make a point, the point better be accurate.
Yeah.
Just saying. All right.
Or maybe focus on real people in your reporting. Just an idea.
All right. James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal is going to go upstairs in the building and get to work.
Yes, sir.
You're going to be the first one in the office.
Cool.
Unless you hang around for the next segment if you're hungry. You know him from the Food Network show, Restaurant Stakeout. Now Willie Daigle is expanding his steak empire and treating us to some mouth-watering recipes. Look at that tomahawk. Bill Hemmer's mouth is watering right now. He's upstairs with the news in 10 minutes.
They call that breakfast, don't they?
They do.
It's like a Flintstones breakfast. Steve, good morning. Breaking this morning from Moscow, Vladimir Putin with a direct threat at the U.S. What he unveiled today, we'll show you that from Russia. What is happening inside the West Wing after a major shakeup yesterday? Is there a deal on background checks? Senator Joe Manchin makes his case live in a moment. And another report on the failed response in Broward County. Details on that and a lot more. It's a Thursday. Join Sandra and me in 10 minutes. We'll see you then. Top of the hour.
All right.
All right, you know him from the Food Network show, Restaurant Stakeout. Now, Willie Daigle is embarking on a new adventure, expanding his Uncle Jack's steak empire.
Is it possible to get bigger? Willie joins us now with some Uncle Jack's mouth-watering recipes, exclamation point, which means yes.
Great.
All right.
So what's the philosophy behind it?
So the Uncle Jack's Meat House is like the new steakhouse era. Younger, hipper, cooler, more versatile. The younger market's driving the restaurant industry. So you could come get your meat game on any which way.
Get your meat game on.
You could have a great burger. Here's our smokehouse burger.
Right here.
It's got fresh pulled pork, coleslaw, a cheese fondue. It comes with all fresh pickled ingredients, farm to table, organic. So then you have your lobster tacos, a little avocado mousse. Here we have applewood hickory smoked bacon that's roasted in the oven slow, thick cut.
So beautiful.
Just look, Janice, don't touch.
With a little,
You told me I couldn't eat anything.
Whose idea is this to put them on little skewers?
well, I made all of these little things. All these plates are made. This is a little magnet, and it holds the steak for the tomahawk. So all this is created by me and my team. It's a visual experience. You come there, you're wowed. So today, everything's about social media, taking pictures. Does this look good? Are you going to put this out on the internet and show your friends?
Yes, I'm crying because you won't let me eat it.
Then you have your bacon. And you can dip it in your peanut butter. It also has the sweetness and the spice with the chipotle.
Bacon? I've never heard of that.
It's great. Well, they got the bacon, bananas, peanut butter. Sure, you can dig right in. Have a piece of bacon.
Oh, I can eat it?
Yeah, eat the bacon. Dig right in.
Empire bigger, Willie. You want to get the empire bigger. How?
Well, first you have to build your corporate infrastructure. You have great people. Anyone can build restaurants. Then it's about building people and adapting today's times.
Personalities and work ethic.
Yes. So I hire people with energy and great passion, and then I'm there leading them, motivating, setting them up, structuring them, organizing. Oh, without a doubt. You're a coach. You're a general manager. You're an owner. You're everything.
What's the key to managing people?
Is putting people in the right places for what they... A lot of people come to me and they don't know what they're going to be. They don't know what they're going to do. They think they're supposed to be this. Then you work with them and you see where their talent is. You wouldn't put, you know, a 300-pound guy at safety if you're playing football, right? You put him on the line. So until you see, and when you build their confidence up and you set them up to succeed, you give them a little rope, don't let them choke themselves. You build winners.
Willie, I got to tell you, the bacon with peanut butter is actually delicious. I would try it again, except Janice is double dipping. Now, here's the thing. You're talking about Instagram. Who wouldn't Instagram the tomahawk steak?
Yes.
Tell us how you make the perfect steak for the folks at home.
Okay, so here's a beautiful raw prime tomahawk. tomahawk steak. So here I have our Jack seasoning. This is a blend of 3 salts, Himalayan, sea salt, and kosher with butcher pepper. It's a thicker pepper. So you take your steak, you want to trim all your steaks to 1/4 inch of fat to leave it to lock in the juices, right? So a thicker steak is always better to sear in a pan, sear on your grill at home, and then get it to your temperature in the middle, get the juices. So the key is take your steak out a half an hour before you're going to cook it, let it get to room temperature.
And
the
if
fat starts breaking
2
down.
inches thick, how long do you cook that?
Well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take it first, and you got to give it love. So you're going to rub in your salts, right, all over it, and you got to rub it. You got to massage it like you would your beautiful wife, right?
I love that you're sloppy.
Well, it's usually you have it on the pan. You can't be perfect with the salt, right? So you're going to rub it. Rub it on the bone as well, because you want the bone to roast. And what you do is you take it then, you pat it off, and now it's ready to go.
We come back.
Kimmel gets blindsided by scathing Shapiro response after picking fight with the GOP. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro sarcastically described ABC talk show host Jimmy Kimmel as a classy guy for a tweet likening Republicans' acceptance of campaign support from the National Rifle Association to a willingness to do the same from ISIS. Kimmel retweeted a post over the weekend, which read, "It would be hilarious if ISIS offered the GOP a ton of money, 'cause there's no way they wouldn't take it, and they'd have to start being like ISIS is what makes this country great." The tweet drew a response from Shapiro on Sunday, "What a classy guy that Jimmy Kimmel is. BTW, Jimmy, would you like me to remind you who called ISIS the JV squad while they built the terror state? And which party handed billions to the Iranian terror state?" Former President Barack Obama characterized ISIS as the JV team in an interview with The New Yorker in January 2014, as the terrorist group was establishing a foothold in Iraq and Syria. Additionally, his administration paid Iran $1.7 billion in cash as a settlement of an arbitration claim the Islamic Republic had against the United States. Further, it released at least $50 billion in frozen assets being held by United States financial institutions. The night of the February 14 Florida high school shooting, Kimmel accused President Donald Trump of doing worse than nothing in response to mass shootings in the country. "Don't you dare let anyone say it's too soon to be talking about it, because you said it after Vegas, you said it after Sandy Hook, you say that after every one of these 8 now fatal school shootings we had in this country this year," Kimmel said. "Children are being murdered," the host continued with emotion in his voice. "We still haven't even talked about it. You still haven't done anything about it. You've literally done nothing. Actually, you've done worse than nothing." Kimmel then took members of Congress to task for taking money from the NRA. A number of other lawmakers who won't do anything about this because the NRA has their balls in a money clip also sent their thoughts and their prayers today, which is good, he said. "They should be praying for God to forgive them for letting the gun lobby run this country." The NRA has been the focal point for many on the left in response to shooting, and some major corporations have chosen to break ties with the organization. As reported by the Western Journal, NRA Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre voiced his support at PAC last week for strengthening the nation's background check system, denying firearms to mentally ill individuals, and improving security at schools as important steps that should be taken to address mass shootings. On Monday, the NRA retweeted an interview Shapiro gave to the Daily Signal at PAC in which he explained what should happen following Parkland. Shapiro called for dramatically heightening school security as well as a gun violence temporary restraining order, like that proposed by the National Review's David French. Shapiro explained the idea of the restraining order is that people close to a potentially dangerous individual can petition a court to have that person's right to bear arms removed for a certain limited period of time. French noted the length is usually 21 days. The order would automatically lift after that time unless the court is presented with further evidence confirming the danger. Trump has offered his support for strengthening school security, including arming certain qualified teachers and school officials, strengthening background checks, and putting a system in place that keeps the mentally ill from obtaining weapons. In a meeting with the National Association of Governors at the White House on Monday, the president said, "We continue to mourn the loss of so many precious young lives. These are incredible people. I visited a lot of them. But we'll turn our grief into action." What do you think? Scroll down to comment below.